It started as a routine traffic stop in an upscale neighborhood. A black Honda Civic, a rainy evening, and Officer James Miller, a cop with a controversial history. But what happened next would shatter his career and expose a deadly conspiracy that reaches the highest ranks of law enforcement. "You people need to learn respect for authority," he sneers, not realizing he's about to become an unwitting pawn in a game far bigger than his own prejudices. As he proudly slaps handcuffs on the woman in casual clothes, Officer Miller smirks, completely unaware that in the next 24 hours, his entire world will turn upside down. Because this isn't just a story about a racist cop. It's about something far more sinister lurking within the police department's walls. What happened to Officer Miller? The answer will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about this case. But before we start our story, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe, and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. The rain beats steadily against the patrol car's windshield as Officer James Miller squints through the gathering darkness. His fingers drum impatiently on the steering wheel. Another boring shift in Oakwood where nothing ever happens. That's what he thinks anyway. He has no idea that in less than an hour, his entire life will change forever. The black Honda Civic catches his eye. It rolls through the stop sign at Cedar and Oak, not quite coming to a complete halt. Miller's lips curl into a slight smile. Finally, something to do. Red and blue lights flash across wet pavement as Miller pulls the car over. Through his rearview mirror, he can see the driver, an African-American woman in her 50s, wearing simple jeans and a sweater. Nothing special about her, he thinks. Just another routine stop in his 15-year career. But there's something different about this woman's demeanor as she sits calmly in her car, waiting for him to approach. No nervous fidgeting, no panicked movements. Just patience. If Miller wasn't so caught up in his own prejudices, he might have noticed this unusual composure. He might have wondered why she seems so prepared. "License and registration," he barks, not even bothering with a greeting. The woman hands over her documents without a word, maintaining steady eye contact that makes Miller inexplicably uncomfortable. He glances at the registration and feels a flutter of satisfaction. It's expired. "Step out of the vehicle," he orders, his voice carrying that particular edge his colleagues know all too well. That edge that's earned him numerous complaints over the years, all carefully buried in personnel files that never seem to see the light of day. "May I ask why that's necessary, officer?" Her voice is calm, measured, educated. Something about it irritates him even more. "I said step out of the vehicle. Now." As she complies, raindrops falling on her sensible sweater, Miller doesn't realize he's being watched, not just by the dash cam in his patrol car, but by other eyes. Eyes that have been waiting for exactly this kind of encounter. "Your registration is expired," he announces, as if pronouncing a capital offense. "And you failed to come to a complete stop back there." "I understand, officer. I apologize for the registration. I've been rather busy lately. As for the stop sign, I'm quite certain I made a complete stop." The quiet confidence in her voice sets off something in Miller. Who does she think she is? Questioning his authority. "Hands against the car," he snaps. "You're being awfully argumentative for someone who can't even keep their paperwork current." "Officer Miller," she reads his nameplate. "I'm simply stating facts. There's no need for this to escalate." But Miller is already reaching for his handcuffs, his face flushing with anger. "You people need to learn respect for authority," he growls, roughly grabbing her wrist. The woman doesn't resist as the cuffs click into place. She doesn't raise her voice or struggle. Instead, she asks one simple question that will haunt Miller for years to come. "And what people would that be, Officer Miller?" Back at the station, Miller struts through the precinct doors, proud of another arrest. Some officers shake their heads slightly, others simply look away. But a few watch with peculiar intensity, their faces carefully blank. As Miller begins processing the paperwork, he can't resist sharing his latest war story with fellow officers. "Another one thinking she's above the law," he chuckles, not noticing how his words echo through the suddenly quiet station. The fingerprint scanner hums to life. Miller presses each of the woman's fingers against the glass, still making his snide comments. The machine beeps, processing. And then, the color drains from Miller's face as he stares at the screen. His mouth opens, but no words come out. Because there, in stark black and white, is a name he knows all too well. Federal Judge Angela Robinson. The station erupts into chaos. Phones start ringing. Supervisors emerge from offices, faces tight with panic. Miller stands frozen, his earlier bravado evaporating like morning mist. But this is only the beginning. What none of them know is that Judge Robinson's presence in that Honda Civic was no accident. The real story is much darker, much deeper than a simple case of racial profiling. Within hours, the media descends on the department like locusts. Chief Williams, his face ashen, calls a hasty press conference. "We take these allegations extremely seriously," he stammers, sweat beading on his forehead. "Officer Miller has been placed on immediate suspension, pending a thorough investigation." But why does the chief seem so nervous? Is it really just about one racist cop, or is there something more sinister at play? Miller sits in his apartment, watching his career crumble on national television. His phone rings constantly, journalists, lawyers, internal affairs. He ignores them all, trying to understand how everything went so wrong so quickly. Then comes the moment that changes everything. A knock on his door at 3 a.m. Two FBI agents with faces that mean business. "Officer Miller," one says, "we need to talk about what really happened that night." The truth hits him like a punch to the gut. For months, confidential informants had been turning up dead across 3 states. Not just dead, executed. Clean shots to the head, professional hits that left no traces. The FBI had been investigating, but they kept hitting walls. Because someone was tipping off the killers. Someone with access to classified information. Judge Robinson's traffic stop wasn't random. It wasn't even about him. Working with the FBI, she had orchestrated her own arrest. Knowing that someone like Miller, with his documented history of racial bias, would take the bait. His predictable behavior provided the perfect cover for what was really happening. A sophisticated sting operation designed to expose corruption at the highest levels of law enforcement. Miller learns the devastating truth. Officers like him, with histories of racial complaints, were deliberately placed in certain areas. Their biases made them perfect, unwitting pawns, creating public outcry that distracted from the real criminal enterprise operating within the department's walls. Every time Miller had made a questionable stop, every time he'd let his prejudices guide his actions, he'd been unknowingly providing cover for something far more sinister. The public's attention would focus on the visible problem, racist cops, while behind the scenes, police brass were selling confidential informant identities to criminal organizations. The evidence begins to mount, coded messages intercepted, money trails uncovered. The FBI builds a case that reveals a stunning truth. 3 police captains, 2 lieutenants, and even a deputy chief were part of a criminal network responsible for 26 informant deaths. Miller's world continues to unravel as he realizes how thoroughly he'd been used. His own biases, his proud ignorance, had made him the perfect smokescreen for murderers wearing badges. 3 weeks after her arrest, Judge Robinson presides over Miller's disciplinary hearing. The same woman he'd handcuffed in the rain now holds his fate in her hands. The courtroom falls silent as she prepares to deliver her verdict. "Officer Miller," she begins, her voice carrying the same quiet authority it had that rainy night. "Your actions were inexcusable. Your prejudices made you a tool for corruption, but your willingness to finally face the truth, to testify against those who exploited your biases, shows potential for change." She pauses, looking directly into his eyes. "Therefore, I'm not ending your career today. Instead, I'm giving you a chance to transform it. You will lead a new police integrity unit, using your experience to help other officers recognize how their biases make them vulnerable to manipulation." The case sends shockwaves through law enforcement nationwide. Departments are forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Systemic corruption doesn't just coexist with racial bias. It feeds on it, uses it, depends on it to survive. Looking back, Miller often thinks about that moment when he first approached the Honda Civic. So sure of himself, so blind to the bigger picture. He thinks about how his own prejudices made him the perfect pawn in someone else's game. But mostly he thinks about Judge Robinson's words at his hearing. True justice requires us to transform, not merely punish. As for Officer Miller, he still works in law enforcement. He tells them this story. He tells them about the night he thought he was enforcing the law, only to discover he was being used to break it. And he always ends with the same warning. Your biases don't just hurt the people you target. They make you vulnerable to those who would use your prejudices for their own criminal ends. The question isn't whether you have biases. We all do. The question is, are you self-aware enough to keep them from making you a pawn in someone else's game?